world champions for the very first time.
Today we have a very special guest, a former Premier League and MLS player himself, and the coach of what can only be described as the dominant Orlando Pride. In 2022, he became the first Black coach in NWSL history and took the reins of the Pride amid serious uncertainty. But in just 2 seasons, he took the team from the bottom half of the table all the way to the top. NWSL fans everywhere watched as Seb steered the Pride to win 23 matches without a loss and ultimately win the NWSL Championship and Supporter Shield. So please welcome the 2024 NWSL Head Coach of the Year, Seb Hines. Seb, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it. What a great intro.
I know. Oh my gosh, it's our specialty here. So you've only been coaching the Pride for a few years, but you moved to Orlando 10 years ago, coming over from England, and you've described the city of Orlando as your heart and soul. What do you think it is that makes Orlando so special?
Yeah, I mean, it starts in 2015 when I made the jump to come over in, our expansion year in Orlando, and seeing the hype and the buzz around the city was amazing. The sea of purple around the city and, having the opportunity to play with some really big high profile players in front of 63,000 people. I could never imagine that towards the end of my career. So since that moment, we've stayed here. It's very much our home. I have 3 kids and a wife here. They're very familiar now with the Florida lifestyle, and after school, going to the pool, or even early on in our tenure here, we went to all the theme parks and stuff. And the people are just great, and they're so welcoming. And like you said, we've been here 10 years, and it's been great.
That's incredible. How old are your kids now?
So I have 14, 13, and 10.
Oh my gosh, wow. Is
Yeah.
it busy?
Do you know what? As they've got older, they're very independent now, and so they kind of do their own thing. They're all into like different things. My eldest son, he's into music and history, that kind of thing. Whereas my youngest son, he's very soccer driven. He loves it. And then my daughter, who's the 10-year-old, she's, kind of a wildling. She wants to just pick and choose what she's into, cartoons, softball, soccer, art, all those types of things. So, yeah, it's quite quiet now they're older.
Oh my gosh. Well, it sounds like so much fun. It sounds like you're living a great life in Orlando. And as you mentioned, you arrived in the States from England, where you grew up in West Yorkshire. Your mom was British, but your dad was American. And you've said that he loved English culture and he's the one who pushed you to play football. Was he the first person who started taking you to games?
No, because I had like uncles from my mum's side, friends who kind of took us. It's kind of unique because obviously, I don't know how familiar you are with like Yorkshire and the north of England.
Oh, well,
Um,
I lived in Manchester for 1 year, but I
yeah, there you go.
not necessarily don't know anything about Yorkshire.
Yeah, so it's like little town, everyone knows everyone, and then my dad is he's from Greensboro, North Carolina, was in the military, and he wasn't familiar with football. It was all basketball, American football, baseball, that kind of thing, and so he had to learn. And funny enough, I was actually into baseball when I was really, really young, and then all my friends in school were playing football, so I was like, let me try and figure this out. So I was a late bloomer in terms of learning the game. But yeah, my dad was very driven, like he was a military background, discipline, go out there and earn the right to play, and even on my birthdays, I'd be out there running and training and stuff. So he was very much my driver and where I became a footballer.
That's incredible. Well, so we've heard that you started playing at age 7. You moved up through the academy at Middlesbrough to play for the senior team there, making appearances in the Premier League and Championship League as a center back and defensive midfielder. And I think that you've said you were only 16 when you started playing in some of these huge games. What did that feel like? Do you remember to be taking the field with some of the best players in the world at such a young age?
Yeah, it was amazing. We had such a good young group of players. In my first early years in the academy, we won the Nike tournament in England, and we got the opportunity to go to Portland at 14, 15, and represent England in that sense with Middlesbrough. And we played teams like Boca Juniors, Corinthians, PSG, all at Portland, the Nike headquarters. So we had a lot of success whilst I was younger. We also won the Youth Cup. So we had a really good youth team. Players, a lot of us went on to be professionals within the academy. And I think that was due to obviously our academy directors and our coaches, but also us getting the opportunity to train with some of the best players in the world at that time. European champions, high caliber Premier League players. Week in, week out, and that was always a challenge. It was fun, but also really difficult at the same time. And yeah, just getting that opportunity to play. I actually made my debut at left back. I'm very right-footed, but I played left back and managed to get a goal, and we managed to win the game. And that was an incredible experience. And then going on to play multiple games for Middlesbrough, which is a great achievement.
Yeah, amazing. I feel like we've been talking so much. One of the things really going on in the women's soccer world right now is that there are so many young players coming up in the league and on the national team. As a former player who was put in some of these really high pressure situations at a young age yourself, what kind of support do you think these young players need, not just to succeed right now, but to have long, healthy careers?
I think you got to be patient. I think you got to trust the process. I think certainly in our environment, and we've had young players come in and they've had to be patient, especially in that first year, that transition from whether it's college to NWSL. With the coaching staff that we have here, we've all been in their shoes, kind of thing. Patience and learning the league, learning your teammates, learning the style of play that we want to implement as well. And if you stick to that, you will get your opportunity. Some quicker than others, of course, but as long as you trust the process, then you'll get what you deserve. And certainly for me at Middlesbrough, I wasn't just going to walk into that professional team, because I had, players like Jonathan Woodgate, who played for Real Madrid, played for England. Gareth Southgate was right in front of me as well, who also represented England and Premier League and went on to be a really good coach. So I had some really top players who I learned from a lot. And I've also learned that just being in that environment and training with that caliber of players, you can learn so much. I know there's a real focus on go out on loan and get games and go test yourself. I think that does come with time if you aren't getting the training or you aren't getting as many games as you like. But I learned so much from training, and I'm a big believer of iron sharpens iron. And so you look around our group of players now, we've got a really stacked squad, and I think that's such an incredible learning environment for a lot of young players here at Orlando.
We know that you first came to play in the States in 2015 on a loan from Middlesbrough to the MLS team Orlando City. And we've talked so much on this show, believe it or not, about some of the differences between English soccer and soccer in America, tactically, technically, physically. What do you think it was about your playing that allowed you to adapt to both styles of play, to going from England to America?
So I found it incredibly challenging when I came over here. I felt that over here, the pace of the game, the almost rawness of the game was unpredictable at times. And there's so many other external factors that you have to play into account over here as well. So one thing was playing in Orlando in the humidity, very different to the North Yorkshire, West Yorkshire climate that I've experienced throughout my career. Playing here was difficult. Also, the first 2 years that I played here, I played on turf at home, which I've never experienced either. But also, I got to play against some really high caliber players as well, which will always stick in my memory. My first game, which I talked about, playing in Camping World, playing in front of 63,000 people, playing at home on turf, but also playing against David Villa, who was a Spanish international and World Cup winner, Champions League winner. Like, that was an amazing experience with, Kaka alongside me as well. So I think between the two different like cultures and styles of play, I think somewhat, Championship and League One and those leagues, it can be somewhat predictable. It's very difficult. It's challenging because you always get impressed by a forward. I was a centre back, so I'm getting pressed by a forward, and they're leaving a body on me, and then I'm having to head it, and I'm having to clear it. It's wet, it's windy, it's horrible. And then you come over here, and it's the climates are different. You've got altitude as well. You've got 6-hour travel
I know.
as well that you have to deal with. So yeah, there's a lot of external factors here, but I felt like the speed of play and the quickness, but also the rawness and unpredictability over here was probably the biggest challenge in terms of playing style.
Yeah, I imagine that you would have, really had to adapt physically to not just the weather, but that kind of pace, different pace of the game, especially in the women's game. That transition was when I went back and forth playing from in the NWSL to playing for Man City. It was the weather thing was a huge deal for me. I remember thinking the first, regular cadence of games in Manchester being like, oh, I get why games are 90 minutes long. And now I'm like in America in the humidity, they shouldn't be. Like, this is crazy. It's a different game. But I felt in England that I could actually run the whole game.
Yeah.
When then I'd come back to the States and I'd be like, this is absurd. I don't understand why we're doing this.
But also you can play at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, finish your
Yeah,
game, and then still be able to get home. Whereas
I
obviously over
know.
here, it's like a 3-day stint. Like,
I
our
know.
nearest game is North Carolina, which we have to set off match day -1,
Yep.
play the game on match day, then travel back match day +1 as well. So it's a 3-day stint. Whereas in England, it's very different. Yeah.
We would always bus back after
Yeah.
games. And so you'd get, even if you went the night before, the furthest game away, you'd still come back the same day of the game. So yeah,
Exactly.
I think physically that toll between the travel, the weather, even the pace of the game that was wild, a wild transition. I know that you retired from playing in 2017, but you stayed close to the soccer world, obviously. You were coaching your kids' teams, and eventually you volunteered to be part of the coaching staff at Orlando. You joked that this was kind of a hard sell for your wife, but what I love so much about this is it shows it was something that you really wanted to do. And so I think I wanted to ask, like, if you could talk us through the moment you realized you wanted to start your coaching journey, even if it meant doing it for no money.
I mean, I didn't have a plan after I got let go from Orlando. Football's always been my life. It's the only thing I've only really focused on other than like family. Coming over here, making the commitment to come over here and having 3 incredible years playing for Orlando City, and then, it's all ended. What is the next step? What is the next, journey that you want to go on? And so my son, my youngest son, he was playing for Orlando City youth team. So I was there, every week or so, dropping him off, watching his games, that kind of thing. And so I got familiar with a lot of the coaches there and getting to speak to them, getting to know them. And then after that, end of the year, I was like, maybe I want to just go out and just, see what it's about, see what the youth landscape looks like from different age groups,
Mm-hmm.
um, different, boys, girls, that kind of thing. I, optionally traveled to one of the tournaments and watched, a girls team play and just the enjoyment that they had playing and competing in tournaments. And so I spoke to a coach. I was like, I'm not doing anything. And he had 3 teams. So I was like, I can take one of the teams off you, like, no problem. So then I got speaking to technical director and stuff. And he was like, oh, we have this team for you. You can have this team. And then you can have another team. So my first 2 teams, I think, was like U10 and then a U12 boys teams. And so, yeah, I was like, well, what have I learned? What type of training sessions do I want to implement to these kids? And so, obviously, you want to make it fun and joyful, so they always want to come back. Bearing in mind that the first team I had, I think, was like a 4th tier boys team, which challenged me in different areas, but it was fun and they enjoyed it. So obviously worked my way up. So along that period, Tom Samani was the head coach here, and I was friends with, Alex Morgan, because me and Savando played together, and
Uh-huh.
so I knew Alex, I knew Kriegs at the same time, and we'd hang out together. And so I think I spoke to Kriegs. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing a whole lot. So then Kriegs spoke to my wife spoke to Kriegs. Kriegs then spoke to Tom Samani, and I managed to, start a chain of communication. And it's like, yeah, Tom, I'm not doing a whole lot. Are you good with me coming in and just seeing if this is what I want to do? And he was like, absolutely, come in. We'd love to have your experience. So every morning I would go to Seminole, where we train now, and go out to training, not really say too much, kind of just observe. Tom Samani would throw me in training if they needed an additional number, and I could maintain my fitness and stuff. And yeah, I'd turn up for home games, give my opinion on a few things. And then on the evenings, I was doing my two youth teams. And
Yep.
so the hard sale was in the mornings, I'm not getting paid, but I'm getting experience of working with
Yeah.
high quality players that we had here at Orlando at that time. So yeah, it was just try and get as many learning moments, environments that I could, and I took some things away and implemented it to my youth teams as well. And so
Well, shout out to Krieger.
yeah, Kree's played a big part in me getting to this position.
How do you think you transitioned from being a player? What did you most directly apply to coaching? Like what did you fall back on and be like, this is what I maybe liked in coaches as a player, or this is like my most important philosophy that you were able to kind of translate from player to coach?
I think I can always rely on my experiences as a player. I can always fall back on that. But as an assistant, so like I think it really, really helped me develop being a volunteer and just observing and taking a step back and not having too many responsibilities. I think that helped. And then obviously working my way up the ladder and giving myself, that opportunity to, okay, I can now step in and say this is what I feel, with the respect from the other, like the head coach, and giving me that license to go in and step in. And then obviously working as a head coach, because I've been here, I've seen it, I see the areas that we need to improve, and I can start implementing it. I think I'm always learning, I'm always growing. um, my wife will tell you, I watch football. It doesn't matter what league, what gender, it doesn't matter. I will watch football and try and learn as much as I can and try and implement different ideas. Um, and I think that just helps as well, have an understanding, an idea of what you're trying to implement.
Yeah, I think especially like when you've had such great experiences as a player, it's you that love for the game is there, and anytime you're watching, anytime you're coaching, anytime you're around the game, that love is like the foundation of why you want to be a part of it. And I think for me, in the transitions that I've gone through, I have coached one game in my life, and I think that the theme that I leaned on the most was like I loved training with my teammates and being at training, and I want that to be fun for these girls that I'm coaching, and like I want them to feel that love that I feel, and that's been what I have leaned on in my very limited experience.
That one
Um,
game.
yeah, we did win in penalty kicks, and
Oh, there you
I'm
go.
coaching two more games this summer. I'm very excited. I know that in 2022 you became interim head coach, and at the time the Orlando Pride weren't doing that well on the field. There was some culture issues. They'd lost some headline players like Alex Morgan. The head coach was dismissed. So now you're stepping in as first time interim head coach. How did you start to rebuild this team mid-season, just kind of having to pick up in the middle of something that was out of your control?
Yeah, I mean, you've said it. It was a difficult time. There's no no hiding from it. Obviously, with everything going on leading up to it, the players were struggling with a lot of confidence. Not wanting to come into the training environment as well, which was tough. And so we tried to, go back to basics. Make it an environment where players wanted to come train. They wanted to, have a smile on their face. Enjoy working hard together. So there was a couple of things that, when I first took over, I was short of staff as well. I think, going back, you're never quite sure if you're ready. You're never quite sure, is this the next step for me as a head coach. But I think once you're thrown into it, like there's no looking back. You just grab it by two hands and you go with it. And so making sure you have the right people around you. So I brought Giles Barnes with me, who I'm very familiar with. I've known him since I was 13 years old. That was a massive help along this journey. In terms of training, yeah, we made sure we had stability, made sure we had a plan, made sure that we have a process to go into games and have an understanding. You've got to see what players you have around you to build a successful product as well. There's no point like going in and saying, this is what we're going to do if you don't have the players to do it. And so we had to come up with strategies to try and win games. And the first two games where I didn't have any staff, I had Chicago away. We lost 1-0. Mal Swanson put Swan in the top corner, and you're like, oh, here we go.
Come on.
I know. Okay. She's capable of doing that. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And then we had Portland away, which was a really defining moment for us because we lost 6-0. We lost that game before it even started, though. And so I always remember being on the field after the game and was like, guys, we got to change. Like, we can't continue to go in this direction. Luckily, we had a mandatory break after that game where players could go away, reset, go see family. Really beneficial. But when they get back, we're changing things here.
Yeah.
So we had, a few standards that we wanted to set early on with the group. We added double days, which is not nice. It's mid-season as well. But I wanted them to almost feel a little bit uncomfortable, but also spend some time together. So we made ourselves fitter, stronger, faster. And it wasn't always hard sessions. Like we added like fun days as well, where, it's team cohesion, fun games, crossbar challenge, that kind of thing in the afternoon. So the driver was like, can you get yourself to get out there in the afternoon, even though you don't really want to and it's hot and stuff like that. But then when you're out there, let's have a good time as well. And funny enough, like we won, well, we didn't win. We went 7 games unbeaten during that period. So there was a change. There was good momentum, and we were close to like actually believing that we could make playoffs that year. And then Rapinoe scored in the last minute and shattered our dreams.
You never forget those. You never forget the close ones. I know.
For all the wins and all the unbeaten records that we had and stuff, like I always remember that moment. But you could see there was a shift. You could see there was a change. We were starting to bring, the best out of some players. And so, yeah, that was what we did. 23, we obviously invested a lot in the draft. We got some really good quality young players to come in, and we had some really good like players who had been there for a couple of years, and they could set a tone. They could tell the players who were coming in, like, this is what Orlando Pride looks like now. And so they're the driver. They're the players who can drive standards. They can drive, the rules. They can drive hard work. And that was important that we give them that sort of autonomy to go out there and kind of, control the change room, because we only can control so much. And so brought all these young players in. We had a really good 23 season. We started off slow. We lost our first 4 games, but then you could see that we were making good progress. And then the last game of the season, we lost out on goal difference, but you could see the momentum. You could see us moving in the right direction. And I honestly think that was a blessing in disguise, losing that fight. Well, we didn't lose the game. We missed out on playoffs, but it made everyone hungry going into the 24 season.
I know. I'm so excited to get into this 2024 season that was so incredible last year. I just wanted to quickly go back, because when you became the head coach of Orlando Pride, when you signed your contract, you became the NWSL's first Black head coach ever. And I just wanted to know what it meant for you to break that barrier. Do you remember that being pointed out to you? Did you know that going into it? What did that mean to you?
No, I didn't know until someone told me. I was shocked, in all honesty, because obviously NWSL had been going, I think, 10 years by that
Mm-hmm.
time, and to be, the first black head coach was a little bit shocking. It kind of showed like how far behind we are as well. But to be a trailblazer, I take that with great gratitude as a black male head coach, and you know, I want to be a role model for a lot of other black head coaches as well. And so if I can play that role in making sure that other people are getting looked at and get the opportunity, and I will never take this for granted because it's a really important job for me, and a representation of other black coaches. Like, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And so, yeah, to answer your question, I didn't know until someone had told me. But it still means, it's nice to get that recognition, but we still got to, keep moving forward.
Well, you've done such an incredible job. We're going to talk about the 2024 season now. It felt like Orlando came into 2024 with kind of an underdog mentality, which I love. There were some exciting roster changes. You signed Zambian phenom Barbra Banda. We've had Barbara on the show, and we're such big fans of her, obviously, on the field and off. How immediately was her impact felt within your locker room and on your team?
Yeah, I mean, her record showed straight away. She came in and just set the league alight, scoring multiple goals in games. And so we just felt like that was probably the missing piece for us. We were, like I said, in 23, we were playing some good football. We were creating opportunities. We just didn't capitalize on those opportunities too often. And the ownership, Haley Carter, myself, we made an agreement that this is the player that we need to get in and be successful. And it was a massive investment from the ownership. I'm glad that they trusted us
Yeah.
within that process. And yeah, it goes to show that, when you've got a player like Barbra Banda, and she's able to score multiple goals, you put yourselves in a great position to win a championship.
Was there something about your background as a defender that in the early days of watching her play with your team, you were like, oh my gosh, this is really going to work?
Yeah, I was like, what gives me the most nightmares as a center?
Exactly this.
Yeah. Okay. So pace, definitely one. Power, and someone who has an eye for goal. And so she kind of ticked all those boxes.
Well, she teamed up with Brazilian legend Marta to score again and again, setting records. The Pride felt unstoppable. You were dominating other teams and honestly kind of calling into question the NWSL's long touted parity, sometimes beating teams by 6 goals. But the team was also holding attacks off thanks to their backline and goalkeeper Anna Morehouse, who recorded a record of 13 clean sheets that season in 2024. Obviously, Seb, we're talking about how you were a defender. And we've heard you talk about the requirements of a modern center back, how they actually have to be more creative than ever in order to play out of the back successfully. So, how do you train your back line, players like Emily Sams, Kylie Strom, Carrie Bello, to have the confidence to play out under pressure?
Yeah, I mean, you put them against Barbara, and what? And so they're having to play under pressure with the speed of Barbara and Ali. Like, that's challenging. You got to make quick decisions. You got to make sure your technique's right, your details are right with your first touch, and not just that. Once you've beaten that initial line, then you've got the players behind pressing with Haley McCutcheon, Angelina, just to name a few. Like, it goes back to my first quote, like, iron sharpens iron. So you've got those players there who can, make you a better player because of the speed of play. Then hopefully, I'd like to think that when you go into games, you get a little bit more clarity and understanding of what you need to achieve in those moments. But as much as a defender, and I'm very proud of clean sheets and keeping the ball, it takes a real togetherness to achieve that. So I know, like, Anna in the back line, get a lot of accolades for what they did of keeping clean sheets, but the midfielders and the forwards, they play such a big and important role in achieving those goals. So yeah, shout out to them because they are working extremely hard and they're very bought into to achieving that ultimate goal of keeping a clean sheet because it gives you the foundation to go on to win games.
Yeah, well, you all had an incredible defensive season, obviously an incredible offensive season. You went on a historic streak. You didn't lose a single game for 23 matches. You easily clinched a playoff spot. You won the Shield with 3 games to spare. And then you went on to win the 2024 NWSL Championship in Kansas City in front of almost 12,000 fans. I think my question here is, I mentioned an underdog mentality earlier. Your team motto became this, "Do you see us now?" And I don't know how much that was like the front office with the media, or if that was really what your team felt was this kind of nobody respects or appreciates what we've done and how good we are. And I'm curious where that came from and what it meant for you all to kind of rally around that idea of being underdogs and being overlooked to go on to have so much success in the postseason.
Based on our record, like we weren't like one of the top teams going into probably that year. We were never like anyone's favorites. We were probably like middle of the ground type of team. Maybe force our way into playoffs or just miss out. And as we went along, obviously, we got a little bit more exposure, but probably not as much exposure as like some other teams. Even with all the records that we were breaking, we were probably still in the back of people's minds. And so we just used that. We used that as fuel going into games. And even now, we probably feel like we don't get the same recognition as some other teams as well. And that can be multiple factors that play a part in that. But we are the Shield winners. We are the champions. We did set so many records, and that's not to say that it was easy at all, because Kansas and Washington pushed us all the way. I know we won the Shield with 3 games to go, but man, there was no room for error. Like we were finishing games exhausted and just like almost relieved and joyful that we won that game, because both Kansas won and Washington won, and so they pushed us to even higher limits that we probably didn't feel we could achieve, but we did. And so yeah, we used it as fuel. Obviously, it's probably a different perspective going into this year, but we can still have the same mindset. We can still have the same mentality. Being an underdog is, yeah, everyone's wrote against you, and you can use that, but also like remember what got you there. Remember what won you the games, and it can go as far back as like doing the basics at a really high level. Continue to work out, continue to work together, continue to be disciplined, continue to be humble. Like those little things like can go a long way to your success. And so I know that gets categorized around underdog, but we want to keep that underdog mentality. But obviously, we it's weighing a little bit more because of the star just above our crest as well.
Yeah, like there's a target on your back now and something to live up to. This championship win was such a powerful moment for Marta, the Brazilian forward, largely considered to be the best female footballer ever. Her mom was in the crowd. It was just such an iconic and emotional moment. Marta is such a force for the women's game. What is it like to coach her?
It's brilliant, honestly. When you've got a player who's achieved all the individual accolades that Marta has, but still has the work ethic and the drive and the hunger to go out and get more, then it's really easy. Honestly, like she epitomizes what this team's about, and you can hold players accountable, because if she's doing it, then everyone else should be able to do it. They don't have the same accolades as she does, but she has such a drive to winning, like it only breathes around the group. And you can see that in the way she plays, the passion that she shows, the hunger that she shows. Like every goal that she scores, you can see like the emotions that come with it. And so the players just really live for those moments with her. And it's been a great honor to be able to coach someone like Marta, who is the greatest of all time. And yeah, we were just so happy for her that she was able to lift that, not just one trophy, but 2 trophies within the season, because she's been through all the hard times here. She's been through all the disappointment here, and she stuck by us. Like she could have easily have gone somewhere else, but she stuck by us. She trusted the process, and you can see what's happened with that.
Definitely. Marta has been like one of the most fun players to watch, especially in this new role. I hated playing against her. I remember just being so paranoid that I was going to get megged and I would just
Yeah.
retreat the whole entire time. But she's such a joy to watch. She's been obviously an incredible part of your Orlando Pride team and your success. You're playing Seattle this weekend. You're off to a great 3-0 start to the season. How do you focus to come back together after an international break? And how will you plan to break down a team like Seattle?
I think that's been the difficulty, because as we've obviously become more successful, a lot more of our players are going on international duty.
Mm,
Obviously, like we've had 2 weeks to kind of prepare for Seattle, but we're missing multiple players
yeah.
within that, some really key players. Um, but it also allows you to have eyes on, the players who maybe haven't been getting as many opportunities, which has been really rewarding to see, because they're flying now. It's been really good, and they just got to make sure that they're ready when they're called upon. Seattle have had a really good start to the year as well. I know they tied against Gotham. They got a win against North Carolina away, which is a really difficult place to go and get a result. Obviously, we watched them against LA as well, and that game could have gone either way. So it's a very different team of the year past.
Yeah.
They're a lot more athletic, a lot younger, a lot more exciting, I think, with some of the players that they've brought in. And so it's always a challenge going there for us, 6 hours away, 3 different time differences, playing on turf. There's multiple challenges, but as long as we stick to who we are and stick to our identity, I think we can get a result there.
I think my last question is just how, coming off of a year with so much success, how will you define success for this Orlando Pride team this year?
We take it game by game, and I know that's so cliche and so boring, but
No, I get it. I get it. I appreciate that a lot.
I think obviously we kind of had a reflection meeting. What was it, last week? The start of last week, and where we were after 3 games last year, and where we are like after 3 games this year. And our first 3 games, we tied them. We conceded 2 in the first game, 1 in the second game, and then 1 in the third game. This year we've scored 10, conceded 1. Same thing, 1 away game, 2 home games. And so we probably feel like we can perform better, play some better football, but also like going to Gotham's not easy, and getting a result there is not easy. And I thought we were phenomenal in the first half, but we kind of showed not another side, but the other side of the game, where you have to dig in deep. You've got to be compact. You've got to stop crosses. You've got to defend crosses. And so we haven't lost that, what we started, last year or the previous years. Obviously, Chicago, we won 6-0, and it was almost a perfect game for us.
Yeah.
And then San Diego,
Almost.
almost perfect game. We could have maybe scored 7. But then you've got San Diego, which is a completely different team. And I felt
Mm,
that first half, they really dictated play, but we stayed in the game. We
hmm
stayed in the game, and we got 2 set pieces, and you got to find different ways of winning. And so
mm,
even though when you're not playing well, and other teams are not capitalizing on those moments, you got to find a way to stay in the game and find a way to win. And we talk a lot about set pieces. Set pieces can change an outcome on a game. And so against Gotham, we scored within 2 minutes from a set piece, albeit it was an own goal, but we put the player in a difficult position. Against San Diego, we get a set piece, Haley
mm.
McCutcheon scores, and kind of change
Yeah.
the momentum. So um, I think for us, we just got to stick to it. Every game's going to be different. We talk about all 5 moments in possession, out of possession, the two transitions, and set pieces. And if we can be good, well, phenomenal in one of them, it always gives you a chance to win the game.
Incredible. Well, this has been so much fun. I could listen to you talk about this team for much longer. I am going to let you go, but I am really excited to continue watching Orlando this season. This league is very lucky to have you. And I'm nervous on behalf of every other team. So good luck with 2025.
Thank you, Sam. And I just want to say congrats on a terrific career. You know, I enjoyed watching you play also in a really good North Carolina team that causes a lot of problems throughout the years. So congrats on an incredible career, and you know, keep doing what you're doing because this is a really good podcast, and good luck with your coaching career as well.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. I'm going to definitely take some tips from this interview. But I really appreciate you saying that. That was really nice.
No problem. Thanks.
Thanks, Seb.